Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of RIA's Lightweight and Low-Cost Railway Unlocking Innovation series of events. Pleased that you can join us again today. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, my name is David Clark. I'm the Technical Director at the Railway Industry Association, and I'm chairing today's events. Today we're going to be talking about tram train and light rail. We've got some great presenters and interesting topics, including from Network Rail, Arnold White Estates and Coventry Council, and that will be followed up by some 5-minute pitches from innovators. We'll finish up with a panel Q&A, but we'll try and fit in some questions and answers as we go along. You can send in questions to the speakers using the question facility on your screen, and I'll ask the speakers those questions. We should finish about 3:30, but what we're then going to offer is a networking session via Zoom. So my colleagues will put the link in the chat for the Zoom session. So you might want to copy and be ready to paste that so that when we shut down the GoToWebinar interface, you can put that link in your browser and go straight to the Zoom networking session, which we hope you'll join us in. First up this morning, our first speaker is Simon Coulthard. So Simon, do you want to come on the screen, please? Who's Head of Light Rail Knowledge and Development at Network Rail. And Simon's going to bring us up to speed with Network Rail's light rail development. Who knew Network Rail had a light rail development program? So Simon, tell us all about it.
Thanks, David. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much to RIA for inviting me to give me the chance to talk and present today. Yeah, I'm going to talk about light rail in Network Rail. I've got about 30 years experience in the rail industry myself, and since 2007 I've been leading a Network Rail side of the tram train project, and from there we've now created a team that I lead looking at light rail. So today I'm going to talk about how we've come to develop this team to be a centre of excellence in the company. Talk about what we do, what we're here to do, how we'd like to work with the industry and stakeholders. I'm going to give you an update on the tram train pilot as the 2-year pilot period of operation recently ended. I'll also talk about the learning hub we've generated from learning from the pilot, and then a bit of a look ahead and a talk about the pipeline of projects we're involved with. So, in terms of developing light rail knowledge in Network Rail, why have we done it? Well, we were a leading partner in the pilot. We initiated the tram train scheme. Experience from delivering the pilot has shown there's quite a substantial demand for knowledge and support that we needed to address, and we weren't organised to do that otherwise. A key objective of the pilot has been to create a body of knowledge to be available across the industry, and we were asked by the DFT to lead that. And we see the great benefit in sharing our knowledge and experience from the pilot to help reduce the cost and risk to future schemes. What we've done and what we're doing is creating a focus for light rail topics within Network Rail, something we didn't really have before. We want to be a source of knowledge and guidance and support for colleagues and other people across the industry. And we're also here to keep light rail on the agenda within Network Rail, and also working with the industry on areas of innovation that may be of use, and also seeing how we might influence policy and standards in relation to light rail. We've done that by creating a small team in the business, which I lead. We're here as a centre of excellence for our colleagues to drop in on and for us to help with their individual schemes. It's not just a small team. We're supported by a wide number of subject matter experts across the business, particularly people who are involved with the pilot. So I've built a small and growing team, a virtual team of industry experts and engineers within Network Rail who will be able to talk about light rail to colleagues. And we're continuing to learn and share. This isn't just about our knowledge from the tram train pilot being held in Aspic. I want to learn. There's many things about light rail I don't know about, and I'm very interested and fascinated by this week's focus on very light rail, which is a subject area I'd really like to get to know more. A bit about the pilot now. The tram train concept sounds really easy. You take a street running tram and you operate it on the national rail system, creating a seamless journey for passengers from outlying areas into city centres. It's been done in Europe for quite a number of years, but up till now it had never been done in the UK. So the tram train pilot was created to test the ability for the UK to deliver a tram train operation for the first time. And we've done that between Sheffield and Rotherham. It's a collaboration with ourselves, Stagecoach Supertram, South Yorkshire PTE, and all funded by UK government. On the screen, you can see the map with the tram route starting in the heart of Sheffield at the Cathedral tram stop. And then in the Meadowhall area, we've built a short connecting line from the tramway to the Network Rail system, which then takes the service on to Rotherham and terminating at Parkgate. We have 7 Stadler CityLink tram trains, and you can see number 2 in the picture there. These are dual voltage, 750 volt and 25 kV vehicles, although we actually electrified the Network Rail route at 750 volt DC, and another first for us with this scheme, a 750 volt DC overhead line operation on the modern railway network. The vehicles are low floor, and we've had to build low floor platforms on Network Rail, and it's again a new one for us, 350mm high platforms next to mainline railway, something else we had to deal with. The service went into operation on the 25th of October 2018, and then started a 2-year period of data gathering. We've been gathering information and learning right from the project's inception, but we wanted to run the service and monitor it for 2 years in order to maximize the learning from the operation. And we did that by creating a learning hub, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The pilot period ended in October this year, and as a huge sign of support for it and for the future, Dan Jarvis, the Mayor of Sheffield City Region, committed to continuing the passenger service for the foreseeable future, and we really were very pleased with that. A big thumbs up for the scheme and for the concept overall. One of the things that passengers really like about the service is it's fully accessible. That's not new on tramways, but it's quite new on railways. And we've achieved level boarding between the platform and the train at the 2 Network Rail stations, which the service calls at. A lot of hard work went into achieving it, and it's an area that we're quite interested to share the learning from. The service was so popular that Supertram increased the length of time during the day that operated, and the PTE were installed extra park and ride at the Parkgate end of the line to meet the demand. We did have some challenges, not all of our own making. The route was flooded this time last year in those devastating floods that affected South Yorkshire. 1 or 2 teething problems with the vehicles, and then of course COVID has affected passenger levels since March this year. But taking stock, over the 2 years pilot operation, we had 1.6 million passenger journeys. We passed the million mark at the end of the first year of operation, so you can really see the impact that COVID has. The service is really efficient. It's very punctual, and we've built up a lot of mileage with the fleet in doing so. And in an independent service by Transport Focus, passengers rated the service at 100% satisfaction. That's unprecedented for tramways in the UK. In the process, we've tested the industry processes for introducing light rail rolling stock and for infrastructure approvals that we needed. We have proven the seamless operation of the service between tramway and railway, and we've been through the process of licensing a light rail train operator on Network Rail. Again, another first for us. So in summary, from the pilot, from my perspective, we proved the concept. We had ups and downs along the way, and people who have followed the story will know what I mean by that. But we've also identified areas for further innovation where we think future schemes might benefit from doing some more work, some more research, and unlock further benefits, particularly reducing the cost of doing this in the future. My colleagues who are talking on Friday morning are going to talk a bit more about that in particular. I just want to talk a bit briefly now about the learning hub that we've created. This is very exciting for us. This was a huge part of the DFT's objective for the scheme, is to provide a body of learning that would be available for the industry free of charge to gain benefit from. We now have that in place. It's using SharpCloud. It's a web-based portal. You don't need any special software, just an up-to-date browser to access it. And we've been putting in here and populating in here information, knowledge, experience we've gained over the years of developing and delivering and operating the pilot, to such a extent now that we are able to share this with the industry. We just started that a couple of weeks ago. You'll see from the screenshots I've taken, it's a very wide, holistic category of subjects that we cover here. Some technical and engineering ones, some more operational ones, as well as stuff in relation to regulatory and contractual issues. It's a highly accessible system. It's very easy to navigate, and we're going to continue populating this through to about the middle of next year at least. Underpinning all of this in the Learning Hub is our learning log. We now have over 350 individual learning items which we've garnered throughout the history and the course of the project, and we embed these in the relevant sections within the hub. This is how you get access to it. It's relatively simple. Drop a line to the email address on the screen. Tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and particularly why you're interested. We're very interested to know why people are interested in gaining access to the hub, so that we understand ourselves, the breadth of interest that is out there. So just drop us a line and we'll set you up to access that in a couple of days or so. Finally, I'm just going to cover what's happening now and how I see the future. Myself and the team I'm leading are providing support to a selection, all of the stakeholders on the screen and a number of others around the country, helping them to appraise the development of light rail schemes, opportunities in their own area. And that's a very exciting thing for me personally. It shows the benefit of the pilot and the interest it has generated. A recurring theme when I talk to these bodies is the need to change, to meet the demands of a post-COVID world, the need to reduce cost of schemes, the need to meet the decarbonisation challenge and reach new markets. And one of the other recurring themes here is that no one sees the future as more of the same. Something has to change. And that's why we're interested in helping people with the innovation that we did in the pilot to see whether that might help deliver their own scheme. I'm particularly interested in working with the Department for Transport as part of their Restoring Your Railway programme. And I think there may be something on that coming up when Amanda Roper from the DFT speaks, I think, tomorrow. That's generated a huge amount of interest across the country. And light rail and a form of light rail could be the best or potential solution for a number of those schemes. It's important for me that my team isn't just about tram train. we're interested in the wide application of light rail operations and principles and how that might involve Network Rail, and hence the reason why I'm interested in particular in VLR. So some concluding remarks for me is that the completion of the pilot for me is a sort of an end of the beginning, and we see from the interest it's generated that there is interest in innovation, in lightening of the rail network, and we want to play a part in that. And there are things that we know will benefit from further innovation, platform train interface, wheel rail interface, a couple, and again you'll hear more from that from my colleagues Alex and Ian on Friday. For our part, we want to continue to learn and engage, particularly with events like this, to get to know more people in the industry. For me, I see the future has blurred boundaries. I think the days of talking about light rail and heavy rail are numbered, because technology and innovation is moving in such a rapid way that those old terms are going to rapidly become meaningless. But we need to be more agile in keeping up with that and making best use of it. And I'm hoping for my role in Network Rail, we can play a significant and productive part of that. Thanks for listening. I hope that's been useful, and very happy to take questions when it's appropriate.
Thank you, Simon. We've got a couple of minutes. There's been a lot of questions actually in the Q&A, so we're probably going to have to pick up most of them when we get to the Q&A at the end. Yeah. But if I could just ask, probably one of the questions that a number of people had in mind, Louise Shaw asks, what were the things you would identify that you would do differently if you, knowing what you know now?
I think one of them is the specification of the vehicle and infrastructure interface. So I know a lot more now. We know a lot more now about the interface between the vehicle, the wheel rail, some of the signalling stuff. So we really had to test that out when we started the pilot, and we've got a lot more knowledge about that now, which would save us a lot of development time. So with the things we had to really run through in the early days, which now with the body of knowledge and experience we've got, we would avoid. And it's great that I'm sharing that. I'm sharing that with colleagues in Manchester, for example, when they're looking at tram train. So that's an area definitely that I'd spend a lot more time looking at and getting the experience and knowledge that we had from the pilot and bringing that to bear.
Okay, thank you. If you have a look at the questions while you're offline, yeah. You'll have a chance to sort of formulate your thoughts before I put them to you when we get into the Q&A proper at the end of the session, and yeah. and hopefully you'll be able to stay for the networking as well. So as you can see, your presentation has generated an awful lot of discussion, so so thank you for that. I mean, these events are all about stimulating discussion and exchanging information and knowledge. So thank you very much, Simon. We'll see you again in the Q&A panel. If I could invite Ian Foll to join us now. So Ian is the Managing Director of Arnold White's Estates, and is going to tell us a really interesting story about the potential for light rail to unlock development. And this is, in my mind, all part of the Build Back Better agenda. So Ian, over to you.
Thank you very much. That was a fascinating presentation from Simon, I have to say. I fear he's set the bar very high. So, if you please don't be disappointed over the next 15 minutes. Okay, so the question I pose is, can very light rail unlock development? I think I already know the answer to this, but let me talk you through a bit about us and a bit about, hopefully if I can get these slides working, a bit about our business. So here we go. So my name is Ian Foll. I work for AW Group, or Arnold White Estates. We're now AW Group, and I'm the MD of the Renewables division. And I'm actually giving this presentation on behalf of my colleague Kate Groves, who's the MD of the Land and Promotion division. We're actually a small family business, although I'm not a member of the family. We trace our roots back to about 1860, the winning of silica sands from land around Leighton Buzzard in Bedfordshire. Today, we remain involved in quarrying. We own a number of quarries, which we operate through a license agreement with a company called Garside Sands, who are an offshoot of Aggregate Industries. And our interest in the quarries really is about the restoration of the quarries. Forgive me if I insult anyone's intelligence, but to quarry sand in Bedfordshire, you need to strip off a number of meters of clay, overburden as we call it, and that can vary from just a couple of meters up to about 30, 35 meters of clay that you would remove from the top, and then you would be looking for and winning high-grade silica sand. And in traditional quarrying terms, the quarry operators would walk away from the site with a great pile of clay in one part of the site, and a flooded hole in another, and nature would take over. What we do is look at the quarry, look at how it's going to be quarried, and work closely with engineers to a very tight specification, and we put the clay back into the quarry under the supervision of the engineers to create an engineered platform. We'll take that platform through the planning process. Often these quarries are right on the urban fringe, and we're seeking to redevelop that land that was once a quarry. But in doing so, in creating the engineered platform and having secured a planning consent, we will also install the infrastructure. We'll put in the roads, the drainage, the utilities, and we effectively lump the site up and lot it up and sell it to the various house builders in chunks. And these are often very big sites, and they're often mixed use. They'll include employment land, education land, and so on. And we do this around Leighton Buzzard, but we also do it elsewhere. We promote land elsewhere in Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire, and down in Devon. Often where there are quarries, that's where you'll find us. But we recognised over 10 years ago that development needs to change. It needs to become more sustainable. In fact, it was government policy. Some of you might be aware of something called the Code for Sustainable Homes, which was an improvement in building regulation on a step change every 2 years, where new homes needed to perform better in terms of their insulation and quality, and ultimately how much energy they were going to consume or require, and indeed how much to live in one of these homes. And if everything had stuck to the original plans, by 2016, all new homes would have been zero carbon. But the house building sector is a very, very powerful sector economically, and it has a very good lobbying arm. And it managed to persuade government that this was a step too far to go to zero carbon homes in 2016. And so sadly, the government stepped away from that commitment in about 2014. But we had already gone down the route of saying, actually, this is an important part of the future. We need to understand how we can deliver this on our sites. And so we started looking at sustainable solutions, and in fact at our own renewable energy generation on sites nearby that we could effectively connect direct to the developments, and that's what we did. And elsewhere, we also looked at innovative transport solutions. And in about 2010, we had restored a quarry in the south of Leighton Buzzard, and the planners were very concerned about the increase in congestion of traffic to the town centre and the railway station. So we took it upon ourselves to, by our planning obligations, of course, we took it upon ourselves to take forward a project called the Exemplar Transport Project. And we put in real-time bus information into the kitchen of every new home that was built on the site. And this meant that residents would know where the bus was, and they knew how long it would take to walk to the bus stop, and they could take the bus and get it comfortably into the town centre or the railway station to catch the train. And we operated the service with a Arriva, and we wanted to make sure that everyone could get the first train to London in the morning, and the bus would be there at the end of the day waiting to take them home. And it was a service that ran throughout the day, and it was very successful, and it still operates today. So that's a bit about our past. I want to now look at the future, what we could do, because what you're looking at is an image of a site, was part of a site, which is a complex of about 6 quarries with large wind turbine in amongst them. It's just north of Leighton Buzzard, about 7 kilometres south of Milton Keynes. So strategically, very well located on the Oxford-Cambridge Expressway. The East-West Rail Line is not far away, and in that Oxford-Cambridge arc of employment and development. The interesting thing about the quarries and this area of quarries that we've got is that historically they were operated with a narrow gauge railway line. It was track that was actually collected from trenches after the First World War, brought back to Leighton Buzzard, and it created a network of small narrow gauge lines that were used to take the sand down into Leighton Buzzard onto a branch line between Dunstable and Leighton Buzzard, and then onto the main line between London and Birmingham. And this was how the sand was shifted. And interestingly, originally, the first sets of trains were actually horse-drawn. So they were zero carbon transport. And I think a century on, and we've had our eyes open to the really inspirational Coventry very light rail solution, that we could see history repeat itself by looking to replicate something like what Coventry is setting out to achieve and applying a lot of those lessons here. So if I zoom in on that area of quarries to the north, and you can see the network of rail that was there built after the First World War, and we've got a sort of draft master plan to the right of that in this concept of what this new development could look like. And we build on that idea of a transport hub and of utilising effectively a multimodal corridor for transportation to get people from this development down into Leighton Buzzard and the town centre, retail and the mainline train station. So what would this new community, what would it look like, and what would it achieve? Well, we think it could be about 4,500 homes, and we think that it can deliver local needs. And what we've tried to do in a kind of departure from the norm from developers, about March, in fact, around about lockdown time, we set up a series of working groups to look at what would life be like for someone who's, say, 12, 15 years old today. What will they require from life in the future when they come to buy their home? What will they want? And so we've looked at areas like education, skills and training. We've looked at elderly care, dementia care, and assisted living. We've looked at the needs for energy and how will that be delivered and what will that be, and critically sustainable transport. It's really important that what we do here doesn't compete with Leighton Buzzard, but it is a complement so that it supports the existing economy. Any new development we do, it needs to be a 20-minute neighbourhood. You need to have everything you need day to day within a 10-minute walk. But we need to make that linkage back to the town, and that's where we see the role of Electric Avenue. This could be a multifunctional, multimodal transport corridor that enables residents from Checkley Wood, this new settlement, to live without the need of owning a car, but having direct access to the Leighton Buzzard town centre and the railway station. And this is the really exciting bit. I'm hoping, I'll show you the next slide, because this is what we were doing in 1977, shifting sand out of those quarries to the north on a very light rail, effectively. And this was technology that was ancient, but worked well. What might this be in 50 years on from 77, so in, say, 2027? Well, we could be looking at something like this. And why not? The track-based system has huge advantages. It enables you to give enormous confidence to people, because if you put down tracks, when you create a bus network, people are always concerned that politicians will intervene, bus routes get changed, timetables get changed, support for it disappears, funding disappears. Tracks have a permanence about them, no more so than in our quarries. Those tracks have been there, say, since 1919, and many of them still exist today, used as a hobby line. We have to build infrastructure when we restore the quarries and put in the development. So we can incorporate those tracks into those the roads that we'll build and the infrastructure that we'll build. The big advantage with this also for us is that because we're putting it through Restore Quarries, we're not having to move lots of utilities and services. We will build those utilities and services so we can incorporate all of that construction at the same time. And as I say, it gives great surety to people knowing that that route is effectively permanent, it's clean, it's quiet, it's reliable. But we see it being more than that. It's part and parcel of this mobility as a service concept. We don't think anyone should have to actually buy a car. If you take the average family nowadays, they might have 3 cars sat on a driveway. They won't all be brand new, but if they were, it's probably in excess of £90,000 worth of kit sat on a driveway doing nothing 95% of its time. And let's face it, money is, you can always do with more money if you've got it. So why tie up all that money in cars? So if we offered a service, and it could be car share, car club, all electric, along with the last mile solutions like scooters and e-bikes and so on, linking in also with a track solution, then you take away the need for people actually needing cars. And that then means, so you've got effectively not traffic free, but reduced traffic. You could have certainly traffic free streets, less noise, less pollution, walking streets. That's part of our thinking. And we've seen these in Germany and Freiburg, some really good examples. And this means that congestion could become a thing of the past. But a lot of this is based around the fact that you'd have a track-based solution as your key artery between the development and the town. So hopefully, one more slide. So this then becomes, oh dear, I've gone back. Hang on, I went too far. I've forgotten how to go back. Let me try that. There we go. So with the location of Checkley Wood, sits quite neatly between Milton Keynes and Luton Airport. So we think we could probably extend the network so that we tie in with Milton Keynes, who themselves have a vision and aspiration for a mass transport track-based solution as Milton Keynes expands to the east, to the west, to the north. And we could say, well, this would be a reason to come to the south. And then you could then further tie it into links back to Dunstable and Luton. And Luton itself is having a new DART solution to link up to the airport. So the very light rail could be part of the catalyst to join the dots. So that just about brings me to a close. My contact details are there, as is my colleague Kate Groves. Please do try and connect with us on LinkedIn or have a look at our website. And we'd very happily talk to anyone about what we want to achieve. Thank you very much.
Ian, thank you indeed. There's a few questions in the Q&A, which if we can pick up at the panel at the end. If I can ask you just one quick one. What's your vision for how you would fund this? Are you looking for partners, or would you fund it from the sort of as it were a roof tax on the property development, or how?
Well, the total area of the quarries is amount of land, and in all the schemes we've done in the past, we've funded everything that we have done through land sales. And I think this project, if we deliver a very light rail solution, that would take us beyond the scheme. So we would seek funding, but I don't think we need 100% of the funding. And I think we could form partnerships and a JV effectively to deliver this. I think the key is that we can reduce costs from the outset, because we don't need to move lots of utilities that already exist. We have effectively and put the tracks on in the first place, and we build roads anyway. So this forms part and parcel that multimodal corridor of transport. So I think our costs could be reduced, and when we match it with other infrastructure, it forms part and parcel of the development.
Fascinating. There's going to be lots more questions if you have a look in the question dialogue to be ready for when we get to the Q&A. But you've created a very nice segue into our next presentation. So if I could ask you to take your camera off, Ian, and Nicola Small, would you like to join us? I don't know if you've got your camera working yet. Are you there, Nicola?
Unfortunately not, David. The camera isn't working, so people just have to imagine what I look like, I'm afraid.
Not your fault, I'm sure. So, but you're very welcome, and thank you, Nicola, for joining us. So, Nicola is the Very Light Rail Programme Manager at Coventry City Council, who are one of the leaders in the thinking about Very Light Rail, and perhaps the first customer for that approach. So, Nicola, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, so hello, I'm Nicola Small. I'm Coventry City Council's Very Light Rail Programme Manager. Apologies that you can't see me today. I did my hair and makeup especially for the occasion, but never mind. People tell me I look like Claudia Winkleman, so you can imagine Claudia Winkleman is presenting to you today. So I'm here to tell you about why Coventry are investing in a very light rail system. If you want to hear about the technical details about the research and development programme related to the vehicle and the track, then I'm afraid you'll need to come back tomorrow and listen to my colleagues at WMG, James Meredith on the vehicle project and Chris Mikolev, a fellow Maltese person that I happen to be working with. I'm half Maltese. So you can listen to them tomorrow at the seminar tomorrow. So I do apologise if you have heard me speak before, because you will hear me say the same things, but the reasons why we're doing this don't change, and pandemic or not, there is a need for urban mass transit which needs to be affordable and attractive and environmentally friendly, and despite the pandemic, that remains the case. We will return to normal. It might not be back to the office 5 days a week, but we will return, because at the end of the day, people do need to interact. It's a basic human need. And through that interaction, that's where these great ideas are born. So I fully believe that there will be a return to some sort of normal. I'm talking to you from the office today because I certainly need to come in and see people. So just get started with the presentation, but my slides don't seem to be moving, so could somebody move on to the next slide for me, please? Thank you. So as I mentioned, there'll always be a need for very light rail, because what we don't want to do is return to pre-pandemic congestion levels. We do not want to return to a scene like this with poor air quality, congestion, emissions, which is just simply unacceptable. Climate change is a very real problem. I don't need to go into the details of why it's a problem. That's understood, and we accept that there is a problem with climate that we need to address. On this basis alone, we cannot support a car-based recovery from coronavirus, and we all have to work together to implement solutions to address this problem. As transport professionals, we all have a key role to play in creating affordable transport that the public accept and are willing to use to replace their single occupancy car use. Next slide, please. Coventry has a very real problem with NO2 exceedances in the area. You can see from this map, those areas in red are where we have NO2 exceedances level. This impacts on people's daily lives. It creates respiratory problems, which lead to other health problems. And we absolutely have to do something to address this problem. And part of doing that is providing that attractive transport solution that the citizens of Coventry would be willing to use. Next slide, please. But it isn't just the NO2, it is CO2. And you can see from this slide that CO2 emissions remain the same over the last 30 years. So we have a real duty in this sector to do something, to make a change to this graph and to reduce those CO2 emissions that are the biggest contributor to local and national emissions over the last 30 years. So next slide, please. Many people do ask me, well, why don't you just use an electric bus instead of investing in the R&D of a new public transport system? Well, the answer to that is quite simple. We do we do value the advantages that can be delivered through the bus network as well as walking and cycling. But it is, as Ian mentioned, it's all part of that integrated public transport system. And Very Light Rail has a key role to play in that, because by offering a rail-based solution, you can avoid emissions caused from non-exhaust emissions, the emissions that are caused through brake and rubber dust, which are now known as the Oslo effect. So we're not saying that Very Light Rail is the panacea and will solve all of the transport problems that a city has, but it's certainly part of an integrated transport solution. Next slide, please. And it's very clear to see that trams are hugely successful in achieving that modal shift and getting people out of their cars. Again, as Ian mentioned, it is largely due to the fact that they are a permanent solution. People can see where the route is, they can see the permanence, they know where it's going, and they gain confidence in using the system by that permanence of route. Over the last 10 years, passenger numbers have grown significantly, and if you looked at the same graph for bus use, you would see a decline in use. So we know that people like and trust light rail systems, and that's why we want one for Coventry. Just because we're a small city, it doesn't mean that we don't aspire to offer the people that live here and the visitors that come a great transport system. But the problem with traditional light rail is cost. Yes, please, next slide. So as you can see from this slide, the cost of traditional tram systems are extremely high. You're looking at 35 to 50 million a kilometre, and those are just some of the headlines from the press. At that cost, it's just simply unaffordable for a city like Coventry to afford a traditional light rail scheme. And we just can't get the business case to stack up. We're a population of around 350,000, and that will be the same for many towns and cities across the UK. And you've just heard from Ian on Checkley Wood. There are other places like Kemble to Cirencester link, and then you've got other cities like Leeds and Bristol, smaller cities that just can't get a business case to stack up for a traditional system. So what we're keen to do here is really innovate in this area and create an affordable rail-based system, and our target cost per kilometre is 10 million, and we do believe that we can achieve that. We've got quantity surveyors within our team, and we've done robust cost estimates and analysis, and we are very confident in our ability to achieve a 10 million per kilometre cost target. Next slide, please. So these are the areas where we are looking to make significant savings in the delivery of the infrastructure. So you can see through the vehicles, we'd expect a significant cost reduction. Our vehicle is smaller, but it's lighter weight. It uses more affordable materials. It will be built in the UK, and there's significant cost savings that can be made in that process. But where we're expecting to make significant cost savings is with the track installation. So we expect there to be very limited utility diversions and much reduced earthworks because of the shallowness of the track that we're trying to create. So you will hear more on that from my colleague Chris tomorrow. So next slide, please. So we're not just here about to address the environmental issues and climate change. We're also here to support the UK industrial strategy. We don't just want to create a public transport system, but we want to create a new manufacturing sector in the UK. We want to lever in the strengths that we've gained from the automotive sector in the West Midlands and bring in all the knowledge that's been gained and apply that to the light rail sector. We're very keen to maximise the local content within the vehicle and the track project, and we're very keen to establish local supply chain for the content of both products. So I've just put this slide up to show you where we're at with the vehicle. Again, James will talk about this more in detail tomorrow. But in terms of what we've done with the R&D side, we've managed to get 44% of the material spend within the West Midlands for the prototype vehicle, and 28% from the rest of the UK, which is an amazing achievement for a prototype vehicle where you normally do bring in cheaper materials from overseas. But that has been a key focus of this project, to make sure that we, you know, build in Britain is the mantra, and we're very keen to establish that sector within the West Midlands region. Next slide, please. So this is the vehicle. You've seen an image before, and I'm hoping you've seen it in the local and national and international trade press now. If you go to the next slide, please. Here are some of the key features, but I don't want to steal James's thunder. He will talk you through this tomorrow, but it's, you know, battery operated with a 20-kilometre range. It's extremely lightweight, around 10 tonnes, 3 to 4 tonnes per axle. They achieve 70 kilometres an hour, capable of 5% gradients. It's shorter than a bus at 11 metres long. Yeah, and we will put on the collision avoidance technology, because ultimately we do want this to operate autonomously, because once it's autonomous you can significantly reduce your operating costs and increase your revenue stream. So again, that would make it more affordable for the smaller city. Next slide, please. So a quick look at what the interior will look like. And next slide. And this is where we're at. So this was a key milestone moment for us. We went to the site MP Aerospace where this is being built, or being assembled. We went there on the 25th of November. So this is a recent image from that. You can see this is not just a pipe dream. We are doing it, we are delivering, and we're very confident in our ability to deliver this prototype vehicle by the end of January and get it over to Dudley for its initial testing phase starting in February. So let's hope that we don't have a bad winter and that we can make that transition from the build site to the testing site in February 21. Next slide, please. So I realise I'm running out of time, so I'll just touch briefly on the track. Again, Chris will talk you through this tomorrow, but the idea is that we produce a shallow track form that can sit in the surface level layer of the road without the need to excavate deeply, moving all the utilities out of the way. So it does need to be easy to install and easy to remove to achieve our target. Next slide, please. So once we've got the track form, we will build a prototype of the track form at the Dudley Innovation Centre. Again, Nick Mallington, I expect, will talk more about this on Thursday, so you can hear more about that. The centre is operated by the Black Country Innovation Manufacturing Organisation, who we will work with over the coming years. So the next slide, just to show where they're at in terms of their current position. So the test track, initial test track for the vehicle is currently being constructed, but they've made significant progress on that, so it's ready for us. And we are currently in the process of procuring all our equipment and workshop for the vehicle for a start to the testing phase in February. Next slide. So just quickly then touching upon what we plan to do once we've achieved proof of concept. So in parallel to the research and development phase, we are doing work to look at the, to progress the first route and look at feasibility work to ascertain what the network will look like for Coventry. As you can see on this plan, the first route is intended to go from the rail station to the city centre, then link out to the hospital, with an extension to Anstey Park, which is a business location with significant opportunities for development along that route, because there's fallow land here between the hospital and Anstey Park. So we're very much, we're very confident in this first route. Our initial feasibility work does show a viable benefit cost ratio, and we'll be progressing that to outline design concept next year. Once we've achieved the first route, we very much intend to have a network of routes that connect strategic locations on the outskirts of the city with the rail station in the city centre. So we've got Jaguar Land Rover here in Coventry. We've also got the University of Warwick that we connect out to. We'd ultimately hope to have a link to the HS2 interchange close to Birmingham Airport. So we've very much got the aspiration to have a connected very light rail system that connects the city with these strategic locations. Next slide, please. So quickly talking through our phasing and time frame. So right now we're in the R&D phase, and we're currently targeting the end of 2022 to achieve proof of concept. But I should say that is subject to us securing additional funding, which we're putting in application in January for further funding. Once we've achieved proof of concept, we will move into the consenting and planning phase. So as railway experts, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Transport and Works Act order. So that's when we would go through that process, and hopefully the DfT will work with us so that we can process that TWAO order promptly. And subject to that being confirmed, we hope to be constructing the first route at the back end of 2024 with an operational first section by late 2025. Because what we do know is once it's up and running in a live highway environment in Coventry, there are many other cities out there that would like to follow suit. So we're very keen to demonstrate that this technology works in a live highway environment. And we're very keen to do that sooner rather than later so that we can remain the market leaders in this field. So just to finish off with my final slide, why do we think we're going to be successful in doing this? There are a number of other organisations out there that have tried and perhaps failed or not quite made it with their ideas. And one of the reasons we think we'll be successful is because we already have significant momentum for the project and significant buy-in from key stakeholders in the project. So politically, our cabinet member is a real champion for this, which from my perspective as an officer of the council, it just makes my job so much easier to be working alongside such a visionary cabinet leader. And that filters down our director, Colin Knight, who you've I'm sure come across. He's absolutely passionate about very light rail, and you know, it was through his discussions with Dr. Nick Mallinson back in 2016 that this idea to lightweight traditional tram and secure the funding, because that's the key thing, you need funding to develop these ideas, was born. And we got the funding and got the partners in place. And the partners that we're working with are critical to the success of this. So we're working in partnership with Transport for West Midlands, and they've got lots of experience through Midland Metro, and they supply us with expert advice and guidance throughout the project. And they also provide us with the independent competent person to make sure that what we produce is safe for a public transport system. Very early on in the programme, we started engagement with utilities companies, because then accepting our product is absolutely key to our success. And what we know from conversations with them is that they would like us to succeed in this, because when they have to move their equipment out of the way for traditional light rail, it's such an expense for them, and they have to change all of their network plans. It is absolutely not a desirable place to be for them. They'd rather leave their equipment where it is. So they're keen to work with us to make sure we succeed. We're also working in partnership with WMG at the University of Warwick, and as you'll be aware, they've a Centre of Excellence for lightweighting. They've done lots of work within the automotive sector, and bringing that knowledge forward and applying it to light rail will be critical to the success of the vehicle project. They've also got experience in advanced propulsion systems, intelligent vehicles, lots of knowledge in energy storage and management. So again, a great organisation to be collaborating with, that's right on our doorstep here in Coventry. And last but certainly not least, we're in partnership with Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council, and they are absolutely pivotal to this and to mobilising the sector within the region with the Innovation Centre in Dudley. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll answer any questions if I can.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and that's a great lead into tomorrow's event. So thank you for that. I'm going to, there's quite a lot of questions in the chat, and I'm going to suggest we save those for the Q&A panel that's immediately after the next two pitches. So thank you very much, Nicola, and we'll come back to you with the questions in about 10 minutes time. So the first of our innovation pitchers is Mike Orange from Cecence. So Mike's going to tell us about the work that they've been doing, which I've been observing for a number of years on composite OLE structures. Mike, your 5-minute pitch begins.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Well, I'm here for an elevator pitch to talk about the opportunities of using plug-and-play composites into an overhead line system. So I'm Mike Orange, or Jaffa, as I'm better known, and I'm founder director at Cecence. Move on. There we go. Cecence is an award-winning and agile SME. We're innovators and manufacturers of lightweight, fire, smoke and TOX compliant components for rail and aerospace, rail interiors, aircraft interiors. We're specialists in the industrialization of composites. So we try and have scaled up manufacture of composites to make them cost effective. We're championing the use of sustainable methods of manufacture, looking towards making rail carbon neutral by 2050 if we can. We believe in the right material for the right application. So we use glass fiber, we use carbon fiber, we use flax, we use hemp, we use lots of different fibers for different components. And we have several quality standards, AS 9100 and ISO 9001. So we have a design for a composite overhead catenary system that's being installed at Long Marston. This is a plug and play that interfaces with existing infrastructure. And this is designed to be engineered for its strength, for its minimal size, and for its improved styling and minimal environmental impact on the surroundings. We've engineered the system with a carbon fiber catenary to reduce the sag in the cabling. And this has enabled us to double the spacing of our pylons, which then reduces the installation cost and reduces the impact on the environment. The carbon fiber catenary system is thermally stable, so we don't have any tension weights or tension compensators required. And these composite materials are very low corrosion, so they have very long lifespans and don't suffer from metallic electrolytic corrosion. And we've shown through costing exercises that we could look to achieve savings around £1 million per 10-kilometre installation system through reduced installation time, and there's also a large saving in through life costs through reduced servicing and reduced painting of our structures, which have a low corrosion paint coating. So the three key elements I'd like to talk about are our design, which I think could offer fast track opportunities to demonstrate our parts and can plug and play with existing systems are, on the first one, composite support cables. We've got a proprietary cable manufacturing system we've developed over about 20 years, which replaces existing steel cables. It's a very lightweight solution with very low corrosion option and is non-conducting for electricity. So that would give us an option to support existing cantilever poles and top ties. The second part I'd like to talk about is our cantilevers. We've got a self-insulating, non-conducting cantilever pole made in glass fiber. This removes the need for additional insulators, and we've got a very small proprietary jointing system that connects it to the pole, so it gives us another reduction in environmental impact and helps the streamlining of our system. And the third component we're looking at is the self-insulating, the composite registration arms, which enable us to have the stagger in the overhead line. But these are non-conducting, made from glass fiber, load tested to be proven to match the steel poles there, but are so light you can lift them in place. And this would give us an option to make installation a lot easier for everyone. So we're looking to find a collaborative partner to scale up from our pilot scheme for our light rail, the UK Tram champion from the beginning, over the next 3 years to see how we can increase our components to be used in the electrification of the rail network. So we're looking to demonstrate these key components on live projects to see where they could be needed to save weight and save cost. We're looking to have our overhead line demonstrator scale up into a pilot scheme, and we're looking to work with high-speed rail opportunities to see where we could develop these parts for a larger scale and take it into a nationwide program. So these are our contact details. Please put any questions in or ask me if there's any opportunities to work with us, but Cecence is a truly collaborative company looking for advancements in innovation to benefit the UK rail network. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. Good timing, well done. I think we'll pick up the questions in the Q&A after, if that's all right. So I'm going to invite the next pitcher up. So if you want to drop off your camera, thanks, Mike. So another Mike Gray, who's the managing director of Firstco Limited, who's going to talk about Firstco's PLC-based control systems. I think you're going to give us a practical example of the application of them. So Mike, away you go.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Maria, for this opportunity. So yeah, Mike Gray from Firstco. We've got lots of experience over the last 20 years, TfL, London Trams, Heathrow Pods, Heathrow Express. But I'm here to talk about one project we have completed, which is the Stansted Airport Track Transit System, which is an automatic people mover control system upgrade. So the system consists of 6 stations, 2 kilometres of elevated and tunnel guideway, and it runs people between the terminal and 2 satellite buildings at Stansted Airport. The original system was put in back in the early 90s. It was Adtrans, then became Bombardier. So Firstco, we specialise in, we are control and communication system consultants and system integrators, and we specialise in developing mission critical control systems using off-the-shelf products. We were engaged by Stansted in 2015 to replace key components of the existing TTS system, primarily the central control system and the control system, the control room operator interface. So the key requirements from Stansted were they wanted COTS components because they understand just how much cheaper and how that drives the whole life cost down. They were high resilient, reliable, open, safe, plenty of assurance, and it's going to have to be ROG signed off by ORR. Now it wasn't a greenfield site, which some of the opportunities for this could be. So we had additional upgrade and migration challenges. They wanted to run the system as much as possible, keep passengers safe. There's holiday periods where we weren't allowed to work, and generally it was a very old system, lots of legacy protocols and very little legacy documentation, and lots of interfacing to old equipment. So we had to develop a program that de-risked the migration of the old control system to the new control system. The solution is based on a simple pair of safe SIL 2 level PLCs that were Siemens, and the Siemens SCADA software application program that we programmed up, and all sits on the resilient IP data network. So we went from, this was the old operator interface. I think the screen on the left gave up the ghost even before we got there. We went from that to this, which is actually 2 operator workstations. They like a configuration where they have one above the other just in case there's a fault. So you actually run the system from 3 touchscreen workstations, either the top or the bottom. Shown on the left, there was a tunnel ventilation system. On the right, there's the traction power. And in the middle, both top and bottom, it's actually the same screen. You can see where all the trains are. So it's a driverless system. So basically, the operator sets how many trains they want per hour and sets the system going, and only has to interact if there's any issues, which hopefully are as few as possible. The central control system was a very old-fashioned card-based system. When one of these went down, they had to be sent off to Bombardier in Canada for someone to get their soldering iron out and replace it, costing tens of thousands of pounds a time. And it went to this, where you might be able to see, this is basically a PLC up here, and this is the I/O. Very compact, deceptively compact solution. Doesn't really take up much space, but one of these is capable of running the whole system. We had 2 of them in a redundant configuration. So what were the outcomes? OR very impressed. finished, and the operator's very impressed as well. There's a YouTube link if you want to go sometime and have a look at just how impressed the operators were. And the lessons learned. So for anything to succeed, you've got to get the right mix of technology, people, and process. So technology, COTS products work perfectly. Systems been running for nearly 3 years now, proven very reliable. The people, we had to get buy-in from the operators. One little lesson here. We were initially contracted for 6 requirements capture workshops. We did 15 to absolutely get it right. And process, heavily assured systems engineering approach with independent safety assessor. Whole life cost, perfect. Both CapEx, upgrade costs and ongoing OpEx costs have been significantly reduced. I'd say they were a third of going a more traditional route. And time, it took a couple of years to get the thing going with optioneering and tendering, and it took us about 2 years to design, build, deliver the new system, which included holiday embargoes, which probably dragged out the whole thing about 6 months. So summary, you might have the tracks, the rolling stock, traction power, but if you need a system to put it all together, we've got proven COTS-based control and monitoring systems that can run vehicles, automatic train control, as you've just seen. We could put in a much simpler SIL4 interlocking train protection systems, run your station and passenger systems, PA, customer information, and control any traction power. And we're also quite interested in linear motor propulsion systems as one way of moving the actual vehicles. So there you go. Thank you very much. Hands back now, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Great timing. So if we take the slides down, and if I can invite the other panelists back to put their cameras on, and yeah, you can stay on as well, Mike. So if I can invite all the panelists and pictures back, we'll have a little bit of Q&A. So Mike, just I don't know, did you see the Mike Gray? Did you see the presentations yesterday? Did you see the light rail presentation from UK Tram from James James Hammett from UK Tram?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, because obviously a lot of tram systems operate on line of sight, but what James was talking about is increasingly they're putting control systems in, and they're looking, and of course there is tram signalling. I'm just wondering whether you saw that as an area for your business to be interested in.
Absolutely. London Trams upgraded their tram management system a few years ago, and we did bid for that, but we're unsuccessful. But it's definitely one area we're interested in.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, is Nicola on the line? Obviously, I know our cameras. All right. Excellent. Just checking you're there. We have got a humongous number of questions, which is absolutely great. So I'm going to start sort of feeding some of those to you. So starting with you, Nicola. You talked about £10 million per single track kilometre? Sorry, I'm obsessed by single track kilometres because I talk about electrification. I suppose it is a single track kilometre. 10 million, is that that's per twin track kilometre or
double track? Double track.
Okay. Does that include land acquisition?
That is a cost for the first route. It's our cost target, and it does include our land acquisition costs. What it doesn't include is the vehicle purchase and the depot, because obviously the depot is a one-off cost.
Yeah. Okay. And the where's that other question? There was another question that was yeah. What sort of mileage are you proposing for how many kilometres are you proposing for this system?
7 kilometres for the first route, with a potential extension to Anstey Park is a further 3 kilometres. So we're doing feasibility work for the Anstey Park extension at the moment.
Okay, and having on various occasions had to go to the stadium, to Anstey and to Warwick University, I know how valuable that network, your ultimate network, will be in the in Coventry.
Yeah.
So one last question for you, Nicola, and then there are more, but I'll move on. How are you bringing together the systems integration? Because you've brought together quite a team there, but who's ultimately responsible for, as it were, accountable for making it all work together?
So we're in partnership with WMG. So they've got 2 contracts, one for the vehicle and one for the tram. But once we've developed both systems, we will have a further contract for the integrated system testing phase. So we will keep the same core team to oversee until we achieve proof of concept. And that's something we have the ability to do. So, and we'll be working together with the BCIMO at the Dudley site. So they'll be working with us to make sure that we create a system.
Yeah. So going back to Mike Gray's example of the of going through ROGs and getting the ORR to bless the work that they'd done, is it WMG that'll lead on that?
Well, I mean, we'll be very much working with the ORR through the safe method of working approach that we're taking at the Dudley test site. And Peter Howarth is our independent competent person on this.
You did say you got an IC, yeah.
Yes, the ICP is very much leading us and advising on what we need to do to make sure that we produce a safe and viable public transport solution.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So turning to Simon now. So Simon, are you able to say a little bit more about how you see the work that you've been doing, or indeed the work that you've heard today, feeding into the whole debate about beaching reopenings? And I know Network Rail have been, I believe, consulted on some or all of those. Just wondered if you're able to say, what the learnings are there, what the transferable knowledge is.
Yeah, just a bit more about the work on restoring your railway. Network Rail is a member of UK Tram, and we're part of UK Tram Centre of Excellence, which is a group that the UK Tram have set up to help promoters look at schemes, look at light rail schemes across the country. So what I was able to do with the DFT is to bring UK Tram into the discussion about some of these proposals for restoring your railway. So what we're doing together, myself, Colin Roby and others from UK Tram, is meeting with the promoters of restoring your railway schemes to talk to them in a holistic way about how light rail might be the right solution or might not be the right solution. That's an equally valid conversation to have. And thereby begin that train of thought, if you forgive the pun, around how light rail might play a part, and then what form of light rail might be the optimum one for it. And I know within a wider context, maybe Amanda will talk about this when she appears on these webinars later in the week. I know DFT, as our Network Rail, very interested in light rail in terms of reducing costs of schemes and how innovative solutions might play a part, might play a huge part in some of these route reopenings. So I'm quite heartened that the idea of innovation, of lightweight innovation in particular, is playing a part in these schemes. They're still quite early. They're still quite early in their project life, but we're getting in quite early in there to put those seeds into promoters' minds and to help them through some of the thinking and some of the analysis that they need to do.
Okay, thank you. So on a follow-on question, but to drill into a little bit more about the experience with Tram Train. Can you say a little bit more about the sort of challenges and issues you had with regulations? You're trying to, you've got things like driver competencies, you've got signaling, you've got different operational scenarios. when you're street running or tram running, and when you're heavy rail running. So are you able to say a little bit more about you know, the things you learned from that? And yeah, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the operations side is a massive element. Most of that falls on the operator, Stagecoach, Supertram, to really drill into understanding what are the requirements for operating on the national rail network, in what respect do they need to comply and understand the rule book, the signalling systems, and things like that. We were really fortunate that we were able to help them, and we had a guy who now works with me in the light rail team in Network Rail, who was the operations guru, really, and we had a very close relationship. Alex, who works with me, with Supertram, who really helped them understand what competence they required. From that, they developed a whole suite, a training suite. Their competence management system was updated, and the result of that was that they now have a whole link of tram train qualified drivers. The good news is they didn't need to know every single thing about operating on the railway, because they can just tailor their competency and their knowledge requirements to the section of route that they're going to run over. And that was a huge benefit, instead of having to learn everything to do with the rule book. On our side, it was mostly around getting our signallers up to speed with how the service will come onto our network, making sure that they knew the process, could accept it in a timely way, so that there was no hiccups at the boundary interface. And that's gone really well as well. Our signallers have really enjoyed actually interfacing with Supertram, which was a big plus for us.
I see you've been very kindly answering quite a few of the questions in the chat dialogue. So we'll I'll not pick those up, but you'll also see that a number of correspondents, and particularly Michael Gibson, has been prolific in putting in a lot of questions in there. But there are also questions and comments. I think you know, starting a bit of a discussion there. Before I ask any other questions, can I just ask my colleagues if they would put the link for the Zoom meeting into the chat again? So at past, we're going to wrap up on the GoToWebinar platform and move to Zoom, which allows the audience to have a bit more participation in this discussion, rather than having to ask all their questions through the medium of text. So turning to Ian now. So where was the? I've lost the question. So Ian, you're looking for, I suppose you're looking, following up on my question earlier, you're looking for potential funding partners. How would that, you know, how would you go about doing that? Would that be local authority, or would it be a section, whatever it is, planning gain, or, you know, how are you looking for potential operator partners? If a light rail operator came along and said, I'd partner with you to run this service, you know, what's the ideal scenario? You're muted, yeah.
When we did the project in the south of the town, which was the Exemplar Transport project, we took the project to government and secured some money from and their growth funding as effectively seed capital for that project. We also had, I think the phrase you look for is a Section 106 agreement.
That's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Significant Section 106, which for those who aren't familiar, that's effectively a legal contract between the, i.e. us in this case, and the local authority to commit to funding to deliver. Normally it's things like education, might be highway improvements, and policing, and lots of community issues. And it's effectively the way in which development improvements in a town or an area, wherever the development is happening. So in this case, we had a big 106 agreement with Coventry County Council as well, to deliver the transport. The way we structured that agreement with was that we would be the deliverer of that project. A lot of money, and we wanted to make sure that effectively targets that were set for that funds should be delivered, and we felt that if we had a vested interest in that, then we would make sure that happened. So through that process, we drew down the money that we had passed to the local. We entered a contract with Arriva. I went off and bought a bus, which was a strange thing to do for a house builder. And effectively, we put together the project with a steering group from the local authority, the town council, Friends of the Earth, the house builders, and the community. And we delivered the project, and we delivered a significant modal shift, over 20% modal shift. And so we kind of feel that we've got a track record of putting together, creating a partnership, both funding and management and delivery. The key to it is that the developer has to be part and parcel of that process, because actually logistics agreements are a great way of kind of just buying your way out of responsibility, and that's not what we want to do. That it makes a big difference to be part and parcel of the delivery. It won't suit everyone, and it certainly won't suit major house builders. That's not their model. But for us as a developer developing in our own backyard, then it's really important for us that we ensure that those funds are spent, and they're spent on what they said they were going to be spent on, and they deliver the gains that were anticipated. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that. I don't have an answer, but it's that kind of model that I would want to use, which is bringing both local government, national government, an operator, and effectively the community together to deliver the solution. And we would kind of share and drive.
Yeah, it's a great philosophy, and you might have seen in the chat there's a lot of support for the approach. A few specific questions. Were you envisaging automated or pods with drivers?
Well, my great advisor on Very Light Rail, Dr. Nick Mallinson, he has assured me, and he's here today, but he has assured me that within no time at all, these things will be fully automated. And it seems this way. I mean, the lessons again from the bus project was the key operating cost for the buses was drivers. You know, we were running 2 shifts, and that is the expense. No disrespect to drivers, but that is what causes the cost to the project in terms of the ongoing revenue costs. So if we could fully automate, if Very Light Rail was fully automated, strip out a huge amount of operational costs, which I think makes the whole thing far more viable. So with Dr. Nick there on my shoulder telling me, don't worry about it, it'll all be fully automated, every word he tells me.
No, I think he's right. It's entirely plausible, and you've got the kind of environment where you'd be able to start. You're starting with a clean sheet of paper, so you've got that. Got that opportunity. So Richard Turner's making a really good comment, which will encourage you, that this is a bit like the Metropolitan line, Metroland. Build it and they'll come. And I suppose so any doubters that railways drive economic development and property development, they should look back to the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah,
you probably spotted that one.
Well, in truth, most development, strategic development that will be planned over the next 50 years will all be around key strategic transport corridors. If you look at government policy, the Oxford-Cambridge Arc is built around the East-West Rail and an expressway. I know the expressway has been somewhat mothballed, but the principles are that you put transport infrastructure in first, and that's what will unlock opportunity. And I think the same applies. It doesn't have to be at that level of national scale. It's equally valid to say that at a very local scale.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Thanks very much, Ian. Really good point. There's a couple of questions. Yeah, there's a couple of questions I see in the chat about needing passcode for Zoom. No, you don't. You should just be able to click on the link and get through, and then so it's a straightforward link. There's a question here from Mike Orange. Have you spoken to Richard Stainton at Network Rail? I wonder. asks Louise Shaw.
No, I don't think I have. I mean, at the moment, we've been doing a pilot scheme, that's been very generously sponsored by Colin Roby, UK Tram, and that's been installed at Long Marston. We have attended an Unlocking Innovation Day before to try and present on the infrastructure day to engage with Network Rail, but we are still sort of in light rail, and we want to move into medium and heavy rail and high speed rail. So no, we're looking for introductions to Network Rail and the right people who are interested to take this technology forward.
Okay, you need to join our electrification technical interest groups, yeah, I mean, we can point you in the direction of Richard Stainton, and
right.
I'm thinking there that obviously what you're offering is to replace the small part steelwork with composites. So you very kindly answered a number of the technical questions that were in the chat. So thank you for that. We've got 5 minutes till we swap over to the Zoom link. So if I could come back to Nicola, there's another very pertinent question here, and I think it's relevant to other light rail and beaching schemes. And the question is, how do you deal with public procurement regs? Because it seems that you've chosen a system which you've got favoured partners, which normally public procurement wouldn't allow you to do. Normally you'd need to do that in an open way. What's the secret?
Well, the secret is simple. It's research and development, and therefore we have a university. We're in an R&D phase at the moment. Clearly, when it comes to procuring the build of 15, 20 vehicles, whatever we need, that will be subject to a procurement process, and tenderers can come forward and bid for that work. But at the moment, because it's R&D and it's we are in a contract for service with the university, and without going into all the details, we did put out a VEET, it was called at the time, and that enabled us to get into contract with the university to do the R&D element. But yeah, we won't be able to just keep extending their contract. We will have to procure the low volume manufacture of the vehicle on the track form.
Okay, that clarifies. And if you were starting again, you probably already spotted this, you could use innovation partnerships to do that, and then move into having if it's successful, having the vehicles and everything from the same people.
Yeah, ultimately, yes. I mean, we very much want to create the supply chain as locally as possible. Our council is very keen that this remains local as far as possible, and obviously that's a challenge with rules, but we need to stimulate a new sector in the region. We can't rely on the car industry to create jobs for the region forevermore.
Thanks for clarifying that. I'm hoping all the speakers are able to join us now for a more informal chat in the medium of Zoom. So if you all go to your chat link, and there's a networking link there, and get ready to click that, because that will take you through to Zoom, and you can open Zoom before you close GoToWebinar. But before I close the GoToWebinar platform, I would just like to say thank you very much to all our speakers. It's been fascinating, really, really useful, and the level of questions just illustrates how fascinating it's been. So if we move over to Zoom in a moment, then we can continue that discussion. So for everybody online, of which there's still nearly 90, in the chat is the networking link. So if you click on that, that'll take you through to Zoom, and having got Zoom sort of started, then close your link to the GoToWebinar. Okay, see you over on the other side in Zoom.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you very much, everybody.